What is your family's insane secret that sounds like a soap opera? My dad disowned my sister after she betrayed him. Now she'll have to live with her shame forever and there's nothing she can do about it. My family used to be really close. That changed when my dad discovered that my mom was having an affair with John, my dad's childhood best friend. He was basically his brother back then and he was my dad's best man in his wedding with my mom. He begged her to stay and work things out but my mom ended up leaving him for John. Eventually they got a divorce and my mom ended up marrying John 5 months later. My twin sister, Sarah, was always the stereotypical daddy's girl. My dad spoiled her a bit more than the rest of us and she was basically his shadow back then. That's why it was really surprising to us when Sarah chose to stay with our mom after the divorce. Back then me and her were the only ones to still live with our parents since our 4 older brothers moved out. I chose to stay with my dad and Sarah chose to live with mom. On the weekends, she'd come to stay with me and dad and I occasionally went to my mom's house. To say that the divorce and my sister choosing to stay with mom screwed up my dad is an understatement. He tried to act like he was okay in front of us but every single day for the year following the divorce, I could hear him cry himself to sleep. After the divorce, the relationship between Sarah and my dad didn't change that much. He started to spoil her a bit more than usual and still remained the usual super dad. He'd show up in every parent-teacher conference, ballet recital and soccer match and was the most present dad possible. Things started to change when she suddenly changed her mind about med school. Our dad was a surgeon and she always said that she wanted to follow his steps. But, my mom and John ended up pressuring her to change her career path to become a lawyer as mom and John are both lawyers. During her studies, John started mentoring her and they became really close. When she finished her education, he got her a job at his law firm. Then things worsened even more. In 2017 Sarah got married. My dad was absolutely thrilled about her wedding and he gave Sarah a blank check for her dream wedding. He was really excited because Sarah was his only daughter and I always remembered him talking about walking her down the aisle. At every wedding we went to, he always said to her that he couldn't wait for the day to walk his little girl down the aisle. One day before the wedding Sarah drops the bomb that my dad and John will be walking her down the aisle together. Well, my dad is the most non-confrontational person to walk on this earth and she expected him to just suck it up. He didn't do that and they got into a huge fight. In the end he didn't attend the wedding and John ended up walking Sarah down the aisle. The fallout was massive. After the wedding, Dad and his side of our family basically disowned her and the relationship became non-existent. She tried to reach out after a while and make amends several times but he simply didn't want to talk or hear about her. We expected him to turn around when she gave birth in 2018 but he didn't even want to meet her kids. Then he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and unfortunately the treatment didn't work and he became terminal. Even with that he still didn't want to see her again and she didn't understand that. Soon after, my dad started getting worse and his health started declining really fast. We lost him exactly 1 month ago and it wasn't pretty. He was in a lot of pain, and had been through so much in these last months. As heartbreaking as it was to us, he deserved to rest, he was tired. In the end, he was lucid enough to say his goodbyes to me and my older brothers. Hearing him saying what he said to me was one of the most painful and beautiful moments of my life. He said goodbye to my 2 daughters and it was just like when I was a kid. He gave them a kiss on the forehead, told them to be good girls, and said that he loved them. It was something I won't ever forget. The worst part was that my dad died without speaking to my twin sister Sarah. I tried to talk to him about her, but he wasn't interested in speaking with her. She started getting more desperate and then suddenly he died. It was expected, but she was in denial. His funeral was beautiful and a lot of people shared their stories about him. Sarah saw Dad for the first time since the night before her wedding and she didn't recognize him. He was very skinny and had lost his iconic dad bod from cancer. She cried a lot during the whole funeral. My mom and John tried to show up at the ceremony and my uncles kicked them out of the funeral. Good riddance. Dad's will went as expected. My dad's family came from old money so he always had a lot of money. He left a little bit of money and properties divided equally to all his kids, including Sarah. He also left a trust fund for all his grandkids including Sarah's kids which he never met. It was honestly expected. My dad never really cared about money that much, he just wanted us to be comfortable and assured that his grandkids all had something to support them. The tricky part was the personal things. He left a really big letter to all of us, except Sarah. In my letter he spoke to me about our story and about my childhood. It was really nice, I must have read the letter like 100 times and I cried every single time. One of Dad's favorite hobbies was photography and the subject of his photos was pretty much our family. As a result of this we had a lot of pictures from us growing up. He gave each of us a photo album and behind each photo, he wrote where it was taken and a few words. I was honestly very surprised. It was a very thoughtful goodbye gift, something that was very typical of Dad. Sarah didn't get a letter and her album didn't have anything written behind her photos. When she found out about this, she had a mental breakdown. The regret was eating her alive and she was admitted to a hospital where she spent an entire week. She is doing a bit better now, getting a little better every day. Her husband and I are really confident in her recovery. She is sleeping and eating almost normally now but still starts to cry randomly multiple times on a daily basis. To be honest, I'm angry, sad, and scared. Part of me feels sorry for Sarah but the other part of me is angry at her for what she did to our dad. My dad was more generous than she deserved. She took it too far, and now she'll have to live with her mistakes for the rest of her life.